Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The primary responsibility of the County Recorder's Office is to record, index, and maintain all documents transferring land. In Madison County, Illinois, their land records begin in 1812 and continue to this very day. Recording a deed at the Recorder's Office establishes legal ownership to land and protects landowners' rights. In addition to documents related to land such as deeds, mortgages, liens, trusts, and easements, they also record DD 214 discharge documents for veterans and out-of-county birth certificates and marriage licenses. Our guest today is Amy M. Meyer, the Recorder of Madison County, Illinois. Recorder Meyer was elected in 2012 and will seek re-election in 2016. Since taking office, she and her staff have improved the technology used within the office and implemented a progressive management style which emphasizes customer service and efficiency. Ms. Meyer is an attorney and a member of the Madison County Bar Association. Her bachelor's degree and law degree are from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Amy Meyer, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you so much, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, most people probably don't even know what a recorder's office is because when they buy their house, that's all handled by professionals, the title companies. They're probably the ones who come down and see you most often, not the regular public, do they?
Well, you know, it is true that generally people have the home transactions handled through a title company, but if you have an ownership interest in land, certainly it's your right, whether you have an ownership interest or not, to come into the recorder's office and view the records, and then also to transfer that. And we do have a good number of people that come in and will transfer their property pursuant to what is called a quit claim deed. Now, I always like to clarify that because people like to call it a quit claim because it is a quick claim.
Oh, quit claim, yes.
But it is quit, Q-U-I-T.
Yes.
And what that means is the person that is signing off on that particular document is quitting any claim that they may have to the property in question. Mm-hmm. Those forms are available in the basement of the Madison County Law Library. And when we have people come up to our front counter that want to do some sort of a transaction involving the quitclaim deed, we're able to send them over to the self-help law library, and they can accomplish that on their own, certainly. So, yes, for the most part, people do not encounter the recorder's office, but we do have a good number of people that do. And I always like to emphasize, whether you physically come into our office or not, if you are a property owner in Madison County, your records are most likely in our office.
Where exactly are you located, your office?
We're located at 157 North Main Street. Now, for people who are landmark folks like me, that's right next to the courthouse in Edwardsville on Main Street.
Mm-hmm. And where exactly do they come to find your office?
We are on the second floor.
Second floor.
Yes.
Okay. So they come to your office and they want to do something. How's that work?
Well, it depends.
They come up to a counter, right?
Sure.
Okay. Starting there.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll talk about the walk-in, our walk-up customers. One of the things that I did when I took office is I'm a small business owner, former small business owner, and I know the importance of customer service. So when you walk up to the counter at the Madison County Recorder's Office, one of our clerks will stand up and greet you and ask, what can we do to help you? Now, it's important to know that we cannot give legal advice in the Recorder's Office, and we cannot tell you whether or not a document that you are wanting to record is legal. But what our clerks are trained to do is look at the document and make sure that it meets the statutory requirements. If those statutory requirements are met, then we accept the document, we take the fee, and it goes through a process where we put it on record. Can I tell you about that process,
Yes,
Lee? Okay.
Please.
We've upgraded our processing in the past 3 years. And what that means is that all of our staff is cross-trained. So we have 8 union clerks in our office, and they are all trained to do the other's position. Now, it's a lot like an assembly line, the way that the documents come in through our office. We don't just take them in and they sit in a pile and then they're done. They come through, they're accepted at the front counter, so our front office clerks will make sure that they meet the requirements. We also have documents that come in via the mail, and we have documents that come in via title companies. The title companies, they deal with so much property that they have their own baskets, and so they'll come and check their baskets and drop stuff off for us that way. Now, one of the things that we do is we check and we make sure that the document is appropriate. We've also...
What do you mean by appropriate?
Appropriate, that it meets the statutory requirements.
And the statutory requirements like signatures and
Generally,
the
yes.
words that are on the paper?
Well, we don't really even so much check the words. The statutory requirements generally are that it be signed by the appropriate party. It may need to be notarized. There may need to be property transfer taxes that are paid on that. Now, our office does not keep those taxes. We collect those taxes for the state and the county, and then we give them to the proper party. So as long as those various procedural protocol is met, then we accept it. Once it comes into our office, every single one of our clerks has a digital scanner at their desk. So those documents now come in and they are directly digitized into our system. They are then indexed. We have our back office staff that goes through and makes sure that these documents are indexed pursuant to the grantor or the grantee.
Explain that to people.
Those are generally the parties to a deed.
Right.
So the grantor is the one who is
giving
the land, and the grantee is the one who is receiving the land. Now, our indexes on grantors and grantees go back to the beginning of our records, because the records have been being indexed by those since they began in 1812. Our record now is all digital, and so it comes in, and as long as it meets the standards, and by the way, everybody's cross-trained, which means we've got everybody's eyes on that document as it comes through, and if the first clerk doesn't see an error, but maybe one does exist, any of those other clerks down the line that are processing those documents will have an opportunity to reject that document, in which case it gets sent back.
Now, do you keep the original hard copy piece of paper?
No longer do we keep the original hard copy piece of paper. The original hard copy piece of paper is returned to whoever it says to return to. Generally, it's either the title company that originated the document, or it would be the landowner.
So you don't have like stacks of paper anymore to worry about it. Everything is in digital form.
Now, I'm an attorney by trade, so of course I'm going to clarify, Lee.
Yes.
Do we have stacks of paper for our old records, which began in 1812?
I'm talking about here
The
in
new
2016.
Nope.
No paper.
No paper. We're completely paperless. Everything is digital.
All right. Now talking about real technical stuff, how do you make sure that in a flood, a disaster, a tornado, that these records still exist so that people know what land they own and what other people own?
Okay. Well, we have a few different systems in place. I know you spoke with Mark Venita about being prepared for the zombie apocalypse. Well, the recorder's office is prepared as well. We have, in addition to our paper documents, in the 1980s, all of our records, the handwritten ones as well, were scanned and put on film. So those 35 millimeter films, we have a complete copy of those old records within our vault in the recorder's office, as well as within the Illinois State Archives in Springfield. For our newer records that have been filmed, we have films that are in storage in a dry storage facility. It's like a missile silo type of place. So we have an extra copy there, as well as the Illinois State Archives. For our digital version, what we have, we're no longer making film. The statute changed, so we don't have to make film. But our IT department in Madison County, we're all in-house. I I put all of our stuff in-house. They have an incredible IT department. Everything that we do, actually everything that the county does, is my understanding, goes out on a mirror image every day, and they have state-of-the-art backup procedures for all of that meet the requirements for ensuring that these records will be available. So we have a copy of them, and we do have a plan in place to ensure that if something happens, we can get back on track and you can know your land title.
Mm-hmm. And in the event of it's not like the old days when a courthouse burnt down, and that happened many times throughout
Absolutely.
history. A courthouse would burn down, a tornado would come through, and suddenly it's like, holy cow, where's our records? And they had to recreate all this stuff.
Well, the Chicago fire destroyed the records, a lot of the property records in Chicago. And so yes, it's something that is certainly a concern.
So people can be assured that once they own a piece of land, doesn't matter what happens, the records will be out there somewhere.
They will absolutely be there, and they will be recoverable in more than one form.
Mm-hmm. So now, you're considered a constitutional officer because you're elected and you run this office, right?
That is correct.
Right. So you don't like work for Alan Dunstan, the chairman of the board, or any of the other people. You and your staff are independent. Is that right?
We work for the people of Madison County. Yes.
Okay. So how are you funded?
Well, our funding is interesting. You know, we are not funded by the taxpayers. The recorder's office is actually a revenue generating office, and in the past year, we put more than $500,000 back into the general coffers here in Madison County. So we pay for our staff, we pay for what we do, and then we also give back, and that is through the fees that we have. Now, you know, people complain about fees, and I understand. I understand that, I do too. But
when you say fees, you're talking about when somebody walks up, all that stuff you talked about before, they actually have to pay for that service. When they hand you that and it gets scanned in, none of that happens until they've actually written you a check and the amount is stated in advance, right?
That is correct. We do have a fee schedule that is online. Our fees did increase recently. However, we still have some of the lowest recording fees in the state of Illinois. And this was the first time that we'd had an increase in our fees in 12 years. Now, I want to note that the fees that the recorder's office charges for the documents, not all of that goes to our office. We also collect for the state, the Rental Housing Support Fund. We also collect for our GIS system, which is the mapping system that the assessor's office has. So we collect for other people and distribute it. But basically, when you bring a deed into our office, the amount that goes directly to our coffers is less than $20 to record that deed, to process it, and to keep it for time eternal.
Mm-hmm. And your records, you were indicating this earlier, and I mentioned it at the beginning, your records go back to 1812, which is actually before the state of Illinois was the state of Illinois. It was a territory then.
Absolutely. And the historical significance of these records really comes alive when you look through them as a whole. You know, after the War of 1812, we had a lot of westward expansion. And you can see the westward expansion here in Madison County via land grants that were given to the soldiers in the War of 1812. And where did they come? They came here to the Madison County Land Office to register those land grants. Some of them came here to stay. Some of those land grants were sold to land barons who came and developed this area and brought the railroads in. So those are what some of our older records show. It's also interesting that we have bills of sale for slaves in some of our records. And people say, well, how can that be? Illinois was not a slave state. And I point out, you're absolutely correct, but our records go to 1812. And between 1812 and 1818, there were transactions that occurred in the state of, in Madison County that are very, very interesting. Some of our deeds as well are written entirely in French.
That is interesting, and I also find it surprising that what you said about slaves, because the old Northwest Territory was that was one of the interesting things. I think that's from the 1787, the ordinance, Northwest Ordinance, that forbade slavery in the territories which now Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio.
Well, apparently it was still occurring. We do have record of it.
So your office actually records the history of the area.
We do. We like to say history begins here because these documents that came in, in the 1800s were recorded for legal purposes. But hundreds of years later, you look back on it and you see the historical significance. And you also see in our records the industry that came into here. We have a register of animals within our, would you believe it, animals. Well, before people had cars, they had to get around and they had horses.
Yeah.
And so, and not everybody had fences. There was free range. And so they would bring they would have a description of their animal. And sometimes they were branded, sometimes not. And these animals were recorded in the recorder's office.
So they can go back and make a claim if somebody grabbed their animal.
That's my horse.
I see. Now that's so past. But have you taken the time to go through some of these old records and just sort of absorb how things have progressed in the state?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I thought it was.
I think it would be very interesting to actually spend time, looking at the development, because probably at the beginning it was like huge tracts, maybe whole sections were in one name.
Oh, absolutely. And the government sent surveyors here to survey the land in the 1800s. And, I talk about land records. I want to let you know we have plats and we have, the divisions of land all the way down to your subdivision. And those are contained within the recorder's office as well. So yes, it's interesting for anybody that likes to look at maps.
Well, it's also interesting if you look at maps that you say Madison County Land Office, you start talking about 1812, 1818. Madison County was an enormous county at that time, running, I think, all the way from St. Louis, what's now St. Louis, up to Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was just, your records include a huge swath of the state of Illinois from an early time.
From the early handwritten ones that we have. For the most part, though, those records, as the land became counties, the records that pertain to those specific counties, their land records went with them. However, our older books, they're handwritten, beautifully handwritten script, and they're bound. So we still maintain some of those very early records.
And do you still have those books, like, where you can actually get at them, or are they, like, hermetically sealed somewhere to protect them?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. No, they were not hermetically sealed. They were kind of put in storage. And I didn't find that storage was an appropriate condition to provide for their long-term, viability. So
yeah, they got to last another 1,000 years.
Well, they do, but I'll tell you, in the late 1920s, early 1930s, there must have been a work project that was going on, because those early handwritten records, up until 1930, were transcribed. So we actually have a typed copy of those very early records. Those are the ones that the public uses if they need to go back into, we call it the Wayback. They need to go back into those books. But the other books that are the handwritten script books, those are available. And if somebody wants to take a look at them, we can make them available.
And I have been in those books, and I found that really, you could actually see there's like little handwritten notes in there that shouldn't really be there, but there's still handwritten notes in there that give little clues as to what people were thinking, and you could almost, and you can also see stuff being passed from families and land, like the oldest son and gets this piece here, and so suddenly these huge tracts suddenly become smaller and smaller.
Oh, yes, and it's a great reference, our office, for any kind of genealogy research, because we are indexed by the last names of the grantor and the grantee. So if you know a family name, you can come and get a pretty quick start in researching your genealogy and your family's land holdings here in Madison County. Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to point one thing out. You talk about the signatures of the people transferring the land, and I want to stress to people that the act of recording and property transfers, that's a trust-based act, that there's a signature, and oftentimes that's what it takes to record a document is a notarized signature. Now with that, there is an opportunity for fraud. And our office, our staff, I made sure that they were all trained.
You're trying to tell me that people come in and they're faking signatures on land transfers?
I am.
Okay. Well, all right. Keep going with what you're saying.
I am. And, you know, this is one of, according to the FBI, this is one of the fastest growing areas of white-collar crime in the United States.
So somebody could come in and, like, somebody's home. They just come in there and give you or they try to give you a deed so that suddenly the owner is no longer the owner. It's being transferred to some other entity.
Correct. Remember when I spoke to you about a quit-claim deed?
Yes.
Well, the actual owner would appear to be quitting his or her claim to the property. And when that document is recorded with our office, it has the effect of clouding the title and transferring it to another person. And because that's something that can be done with a signature, we encourage everyone to sign up for our Property Fraud Alert program.
And how does that work?
Well, how that works is you can contact us online at the recorder's office. You can send a request to the recorder's office as well. And it will take you to a window where you can say, I'd like to be signed up for property fraud. You give us your name, and anytime there is a document that transfers property in Madison County under your name, you will receive a notification, however you wish, be it via email or telephone or regular mail, indicating to you that a property transfer has occurred. Now, you may be expecting one if you just sold a home.
Or not.
Or not. And there's always the possibility
like,
that someone could share your name, and it could be that. But
Yeah.
what this does is it allows people to contact us then immediately and say, did something happen with my property? Has something occurred? Because otherwise, if there's a fraudulent transfer, you may not know. Mm-hmm. You may not know until the property's been transferred and then sold again.
And you're not getting your tax bill.
That could
might
occur
be a
as well.
signal too. Does this cost people anything?
There's no cost for it. No
So all they have
cost.
to do is just sign up for this program, and then it's like a fraud alert at the credit bureau.
It's like a fraud alert at the credit bureau. We don't take your information and distribute it to anybody else. It's for your own personal comfort of knowing if something goes on, I will get notice of it. Mm-hmm. And we have actually had, we have found fraud in our records. My staff caught fraud coming through. These instances, the Sheriff's Department investigated these matters. There were felony charges that have been brought. There's somebody sitting in jail right now. The state's attorney has taken a very hard line with regard to prosecution. Good. Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Now, I also mentioned in the opening you have a program for veterans. Why don't you talk about that?
Okay. We record DD-214s, which are Veterans Discharge Records. Now, our records go back for a long time, and our first discharge records are from the Civil War. And so we have approximately 140 Civil War discharges, which have been indexed by the students at SIUE. We encourage all veterans to come in and put their DD-214s on record. We need to have an original in order to do that. And people say, well, why would we do that? Well, first of all, let me tell veterans, your DD-214s are not public record. Our records in general are open to search by anyone, but our DD-214s are under lock and key, and only the veteran or next of kin can request them.
Just remind them that sometimes they get lost or damaged, and if they do, you've got a copy.
If they do, we've got a copy, and some people know firsthand when the Records Center lost a good deal of records to fire. We have a copy in our office. So there's that reason. It's also for family members. I mean, if you're not real organized, it's nice for your family members to know, here's where the records are.
And this benefits veterans when?
Well, when a veteran passes away, they are entitled to certain benefits at their funeral, and oftentimes that's when the family is looking for the DD-214.
Right. And if they can't find it in his files,
then
his or her files,
then they'll know that it's with our office.
Yes.
You know, and in addition to those utilitarian purposes for putting them on record, it's also important because we do maintain the history of our county through many of our records, and we want to have a historical listing of our soldiers here in Madison County. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are originally from somewhere else that you can't bring your records in. If you're a resident here of Madison County, bring them in and put them on record with us. And there's no charge for that. There's also no charge to get a certified copy, and we'll give you a wallet card as well.
That's very nice. I mean, the fact that there's no charge, because you said that the fees on some of these other things can be, you know, not insubstantial.
Certainly, certainly, but a veteran should never have to pay to get a copy of his or her records.
So in the last 3 minutes that we have here in this half hour of ours, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say? Or is there anything you would like to say to the public that you want them to know?
Well, I want them to know that the Madison County Recorder's Office really is an asset to them, that these records belong to the people of Madison County. I also want to stress the importance of the Recorder's Office. A lot of people don't know why, what do you do, and why does it matter? Right,
they didn't even know you were there.
Which I suppose is good, you know, it means you're not doing anything wrong, but we want people to know we're here because we do have a lot of great records. We have programs within our office. And
people they're allowed to come and look through records too, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is not like some areas are confidential, like you said, the DD-214s are confidential, but all these land records, if somebody wanted to actually take the time to go back and look at their own property and trace it all the way back to 1812, they could, right?
They absolutely could. I mean, it might take them a little bit. I would guarantee it would be a learning process, but we do have people that come in and they enjoy the opportunity to go through the records and see that.
Yeah, some retirees that, you know.
But there's a lot of history.
Some people find that fun.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, well, I was too. I learned that whole system before you had computers.
Me too.
You know, using the books and all that stuff. That it was, you know, and the people there are very friendly. I mean, I found that office has always been very helpful.
Well, we take pride in being welcoming and letting people know how good Madison County is. You know, we see people when they move in here, and if you come into our office, you're going to have a good experience.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about the title company people. They actually do a lot of work. They used to do a lot of work in your office. Are they there anymore? They used to have their own little tables and sections that they could work in. Do they still do that, or is this all remote control now?
Well, there's the opportunity for both. So we do have our regular title searchers that will come in and kind of set up camp for the day, but we do offer a Laredo search service, which allows mostly people in the title industry to obtain a subscription, and then they can search our records off-site.
Mm-hmm. That's about all the time we have today. I want to say how much, we've never met before. We have talked on the phone, but I really have enjoyed having you here with us. And it sounds like you're doing a really great job over there at the Recorder's Office. So I'm pleased to have you here, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Lee. My pleasure.
You're very welcome. And I've been speaking with Amy M. Meyer. She is the Recorder of Madison County, Illinois. Today we've learned a lot about how the Recorder's Office actually works. And I would suggest that anybody who hasn't actually seen these books or these records, if you feel like it, go down there and take a look. This is going to be uploaded to YouTube so that you can show it to your friends. Just go to Conversation with Lee Presser, Amy Meyer. Thanks. Bye.